The Untold History, a podcast by the Hispanic Council, with the collaboration of the Spanish Ministry of Defense, to get to know great Spanish figures in the history of the United States. Today, Juan Francisco de la Bodega y Quadra. Criollos is the name given to those people who are direct descendants of Spaniards born in America. Although the denomination didn't have a legal importance, since everyone born in a territory of the Spanish crown was considered a Spaniard, it is true that the American ruling class were overwhelmingly populated by Criollos, or Spaniards of European descent. This was the case of Juan Francisco de la Bodega y Quadra, born in Lima in 1774, as the son of a Spaniard and a woman from Lima. Juan Francisco traveled to Spain in 1762, when he was 18, to become Guardia Marina in the Naval School of Cadiz. During his naval training, he sailed in the ship of the line Terrible, which had 74 cannons, and sailed the North African coast as a privateer. In 1767, he graduated as an ensign, and he was assigned to the frigate Heceta. Afterwards, and in another ship, the Septentrion, he sailed to America, but for a brief time, since the vessel was stationed somewhere else, and he had to return to Spain. The truth is that Juan Francisco wanted to go back to Peru to be with his family, and so he told the Minister of the Navy, who rejected his petitions numerous times, until in 1773, a detachment of officials was made, with the objective of performing exploratory missions in the American Pacific coast. Juan Francisco was finally able to return home to America. For their first mission, under the auspices of the Viceroy of New Spain, Antonio de Bucareli, Juan Francisco and his expedition companions had brought, from Spain, all sorts of measuring and navigational instruments, with the aim of mapping and charting routes along the northern lands they were destined to navigate. Although the plan of action devised by the Viceroy was less scientific than territorial, his desire was for Bodega and his companions to reaffirm Spanish domination of the waters and territories north of California that had long since been incorporated into the crown. The mission left San Blas on March 16, 1775. The expedition was commanded by Lieutenant Bruno Heceta and had 3 ships: the frigate Santiago, the schooner Sonora, and the packet boat San Carlos. Juan Francisco was second in command of the Sonora, but an incident ended up giving him command of the San Carlos. Once he was given command of the ship, and the voyage had continued, scurvy broke out among the crew, which led to insubordination and mutiny attempts. To make matters worse, they were attacked by a tribe of Indians when they were making water at what is now Point Greenville in Washington state, causing 20 deaths. Everything ended up leading Heceta to decide, as head of the expedition, to return to the Viceroyalty of New Spain. But Juan Francisco had not lost the courage or the drive to go on, so he asked to continue the voyage alone aboard the Sonora. His wish was granted by Heceta, who sincerely thought that he would never see the ship, the crew, or Juan Francisco again, since it seemed crazy to continue north in such a small ship and with such a small crew. Within a month, however, Bodega was at the 58th parallel, which corresponds to the present state of Alaska. There, he established Puerto de los Remedios, the port of Bodega, and named Bucareli Bay. As the Alaskan winter was beginning to set in, they decided to take the route back to San Blas. Upon arrival, he was promoted to lieutenant commander. Bodega's achievement was a full-fledged feat if we consider the means at his disposal. It is not surprising that, when the Sonora headed for the entrance to the port of San Blas, the Viceroy and its former commander, Heceta, were among the most impressed. In addition, his feat came with tangible achievements, since Juan Francisco was almost as good a writer and storyteller as he was a sailor. From his first voyage, he left copious documentation describing the lands encountered, their inhabitants, its fauna, and its flora in great detail. Of course, his notes included navigation routes, maps, and advice for the sailors. The fulfillment of his mission and all that he contributed to it prompted Viceroy Bucarelli to write to the court about Quadra in glowing terms. Not in vain, the navigation of our protagonist had extended the domains of Spain by 500 leagues to the north. So, King Carlos III was encouraged to continue promoting expeditions as far as the world would go. And so, it was done. On February 11, 1779, and aboard the frigates Princesa and Favorita and the schooner Activa, Juan Francisco departed again from San Blas. The greater seniority of Ignacio de Arteaga prevented Bodega from commanding the expedition, remaining as second in the hierarchy. The mission consisted of exploring the northwest coast and trying to avoid confrontations with the English navigators that were assumed to be in the area. Every bay and inlet were mapped, and the so often pursued, and as we know today non-existent, Northwest Passage was sought. The 61st parallel north was the highest latitude they reached, before having to turn back from Alaska due to bad weather. This voyage completed the complex process of reclaiming the Pacific Northwest for the Crown of Spain. The following year, Juan Francisco was given command of the Department of San Blas in New Spain, present-day Mexico, as a reward for his achievements. San Blas, although a rather unhealthy place, was a strategically important location. Shortly after a year, Bodega was relieved, possibly due to health problems. Bodega returned to Peru in 1784 and spent a few years between Havana and the mainland, a time during which he was not entrusted with any mission of importance. Through these years, and due to the lack of expeditions, Bodega wrote to Minister Valdés repeatedly, asking to return him overseas to do navigation and exploratory work. The problem, in any case, was not his, nor was it the responsibility of the Minister of the Navy, but rather was because the royal expeditions were quite stagnant. In 1789, he would render a last mission to the crown, not of an exploratory nature, but of a diplomatic one. He was ordered to return to San Blas as the commander of the square to negotiate the Spanish sovereignty of the northwest coast of America. Captain Bodega y Quadra, as Spanish commissioner for the negotiation, met with British Captain George Vancouver on Nootka Island. Both maintained good relations, but were not able to reach an accord, most likely because Bodega was not very much in agreement with the position of his own country's government, since he understood that the Spanish presence on the island predated the British. In the end, both agreed to send their conflicting positions to their respective governments. During the transactions, Juan Francisco asked Vancouver to baptize someplace with the name of both of them. That is why they decided that the island on whose soil they were negotiating should be called Quadra and Vancouver Island. And with this name, it was introduced into the navigation charts. Unfortunately, the name was soon shortened to Vancouver by the cartographers of the Hudson's Bay Company, which held the concession of trade in that area from the English crown. Today, the name Quadra and Vancouver cannot be found in any cartography of the island. The Spanish presence in those latitudes, whose discovery, mapping, and occupation had been carried out by Spain, lasted little longer than the original name of Vancouver, since in 1794 the place was peacefully abandoned and ceded to the English. On his return to San Blas, Juan Francisco de la Bodega y Quadra fell ill and died on March 29, 1794, at the age of 50 in Mexico City. His remains were buried in the convent of San Fernando.